Marcus Reed sank deeper into the luminescent thermal pool, feeling the specially treated mineral water work its way into muscles that hadn't relaxed in months. The private chamber aboard Nexus Station cost more than his rent back on Earth, but after 6 months of rejection letters and dwindling bank accounts, he'd decided his sanity was worth the debt. The therapeutic pools were legendary throughout the galaxy. Natural healing waters harvested from the volcanic moon of Thermus Prime, charged with bioactive minerals that could ease everything from arthritis to old shrapnel wounds. Marcus had both. 1,200 credits for 4 hours, he muttered, watching the azure water swirl with tiny points of light around his scarred shoulder. Better work because it's ramen noodles for the next 2 weeks. The explosion on Kepler Station had ended his military engineering career 3 years ago. 17 pieces of hull plating had turned his left side into a patchwork of scars and chronic pain. The Veterans Administration called it service-connected disability with partial compensation. Marcus called it a constant reminder that he'd failed to detect the structural weakness that killed 6 of his team. He closed his eyes and tried to let the thermal waters work their supposed magic. The pool chamber was designed for privacy. Curved walls that blocked sound, soft bioluminescent lighting that adjusted to circadian rhythms, temperature controls that could simulate anything from Arctic springs to volcanic hot springs. For the first time in months, Marcus felt something approaching peace. The water beside him erupted. Marcus jerked upright, grabbing for a weapon that wasn't there, as a figure burst from the pool's surface in a cascade of sparkling droplets. His military reflexes cataloged the threat assessment in milliseconds. Humanoid, approximately 5.5 feet tall, distinctly non-human, and radiating an aura of barely contained fury. The being that rose from his thermal pool was unlike anything in the xenobiology databases. Her skin was a deep sapphire blue that seemed to shift and shimmer in the bioluminescent lighting. Intricate silver markings covered her arms and torso in patterns that pulsed with their own inner light. Her hair was a cascade of midnight black with streaks of electric blue, adorned with what looked like actual gems woven into complex braids. She wore ceremonial jewelry that managed to be both elegant and minimal, strategic metalwork that covered just enough to maintain dignity, while leaving little doubt about her athletic physique. But it was her eyes that made Marcus's breath catch. Violet irises that seemed to hold the depth of nebulae, currently fixed on him with unmistakable irritation. "You," she said, her voice carrying an accent that made each word sound like a formal decree, "are occupying my resonance chamber." Marcus blinked, his brain struggling to process the situation. A gorgeous alien woman had just materialized in his expensive therapeutic bath, and her opening line was essentially a cosmic eviction notice. "I'm sorry. What now?" he managed. She rose fully from the water, somehow managing to look regal, despite being soaked and mostly naked. The luminescent markings on her skin pulsed in what might have been indignation. "This thermal resonance chamber belongs to the Kalthani hegemony by ancient covenant. You are trespassing on sovereign territory. Lady, I hate to break it to you, but I've got a receipt that says otherwise." Marcus gestured to the payment tablet floating in its waterproof case. 1,200 credits to Nexus Station Wellness Division. Fair and square. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together in confusion. "Credits? You believe monetary exchange supersedes hereditary territorial rights?" "That's generally how commerce works, yes." Marcus was starting to feel like he'd stumbled into the galaxy's most expensive misunderstanding. "You buy things, you own them temporarily. Basic economics." The alien woman settled back into the water across from him, her movements graceful despite her obvious displeasure. A jeweled circlet around her forehead caught the light, and Marcus noticed her ears came to elegant points. "I am Vespira of the Kalthani hegemony, third resonance of the thermal houses, keeper of the sacred waters. You may address me as Lady Vespira. I'm Marcus Reed, former military engineer, current professional disappointment. You can call me Marcus or Hey You, or whatever makes you happy. But I'm not giving up my pool time for anyone without a badge. And a warrant." Vespira's markings flared brighter. "You dare speak to Kalthani nobility with such casual disrespect?" "Look, Lady Vespira, I've had a really rough year, okay?" Marcus felt months of frustration bubbling up. I lost my career. My health insurance decided my pain medication was unnecessary, and my landlord just raised my rent because apparently my building's now in a gentrified zone. So excuse me if I'm not ready to bow and scrape for someone who thinks she can claim other people's legally purchased relaxation time. Something flickered across Vespera's face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. But it vanished behind noble composure almost immediately. Your personal misfortunes do not negate ancient territorial law. And your ancient territorial law doesn't negate my credit card statement. They stared at each other across the thermal pool. Marcus had to admit she was stunning, even when she looked like she wanted to vaporize him with her glowing eyes. The way the bioluminescent water played across her blue skin, the elegant line of her neck, the way her markings pulsed in rhythm with what might have been her heartbeat, it was all very distracting from the fact that she was trying to steal his therapy session. You will not yield your claim, Vespera said finally. Not a chance. Then we must resolve this according to Kalthani law. Her smile was sharp as a blade and twice as dangerous. Marcus felt a chill despite the warm water. What kind of law? Disputed territorial rights must be settled through bioresonance trials. Whoever can maintain sustained physical contact for the duration of one thermal cycle wins sovereignty over the resonance chamber. Physical contact trials? Marcus's voice cracked slightly. What exactly does that mean? It means, Marcus of the former military engineers, that we must remain in physical contact until the station completes one full rotation cycle. Her smile widened, showing teeth that were perfectly white and slightly pointed. The one who breaks contact first forfeits all claim to the thermal chamber. Marcus's brain short-circuited somewhere between physical contact and station rotation. You want to have a touching contest to decide who gets to use the pool? If that is how your primitive understanding interprets sacred Kalthani bioresonance law, then yes. He looked around the thermal chamber, calculating distances and angles. The space was maybe 10 feet across, intimate by any standard. And she wanted them to stay in physical contact for how long? How long is a station rotation cycle? Approximately 8 of your Earth hours. Marcus squinted at the chronometer display on the wall. They were looking at a long hall. So let me get this straight. You want us to stay touching each other in a hot mineral bath for the next 8 hours, and whoever moves away first loses. Precisely. And you think you'll win because... Vespera's expression turned predatory. Because I am Kalthani nobility, trained from birth in bioresonance endurance. And you are a damaged human who has already admitted to chronic pain and physical limitation. That stung more than it should have. Marcus felt his jaw clench. Damaged? He leaned forward, military posture taking over despite the casual setting. Lady, I've spent 18-hour shifts in zero-G repair suits. I've worked through 3 broken ribs and a concussion to prevent reactor meltdown. And I once spent 36 hours straight debugging life support code while the ship was under fire. I think I can handle a little pool time with a princess who's too entitled to make a reservation like everyone else. Vespera's markings flared brighter, but there was something else in her expression now. Respect, maybe, or at least acknowledgement, of a worthy opponent. Then you accept the bioresonance trial? Marcus looked at her. Really looked. She was gorgeous, dangerous, and completely insane. She was also the most interesting thing that had happened to him in months. You know what? Fine. But when I win, you're covering half my pool fee. When you lose, Vespera purred, moving closer. Through the water, you will acknowledge Kalthani sovereignty and provide proper thermal attendance for the remainder of my stay. Deal. Marcus extended his hand. Should we shake on it? Vespera stared at his outstretched hand like it might bite her. Is this some primitive human bonding ritual? It's called a handshake. It means we agree to the terms. She reached out tentatively and grasped his hand. Her skin was warm, warmer than the pool water, warmer than seemed biologically possible. The luminescent markings on her arm pulsed brighter, where they touched. The trial begins now, she said softly. Marcus felt a jolt of energy shoot up his arm from their joined hands. Vespera's eyes widened slightly, and her markings flared so bright they were visible even in the chamber's soft lighting. "What was that?" he asked. "Nothing. Bioresonance feedback, perfectly normal." But her voice had lost some of its imperial certainty. They were still holding hands, and Marcus became acutely aware of how close she was sitting. Close enough to see flecks of silver in her violet eyes. Close enough to catch a scent like ozone and something floral. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from her skin in waves that had nothing to do with the thermal pool. "So," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "what happens now?" Vespira's smile returned, but it looked less certain than before. "Now we wait and see who breaks first." "Bring it on, your ladyship." The station hummed around them. The thermal waters pulsed with mineral energy, and Marcus Reed found himself locked in the most bizarre contest of his life with an alien noble who might just be the most dangerous and attractive opponent he'd ever faced. The bioresonance trial had begun. The first 2 hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the gentle hum of the station's recycling systems and the soft burble of mineral-rich water circulating through the thermal pool. Marcus kept his hand, locked with Vespira's, determined not to be the first to crack. Her skin remained impossibly warm, and those luminescent markings continued their hypnotic pulsing wherever they touched. "Your biothermal output is unusual," Vespira said finally, breaking the silence. Her imperial tone had softened slightly, curiosity bleeding through the noble facade. "Most species run significantly cooler than optimal Calthani compatibility range." Marcus grinned despite himself. "Are you saying I'm running hot, Lady Vespira?" "I am making an objective physiological observation." But he noticed the way her markings flared brighter, and she hadn't pulled her hand away despite having several opportunities. "Your neural biosignature resonates at nearly perfect frequency with Calthani standards. So what's a noble doing crashing random people's pool time anyway?" Marcus shifted slightly, trying to ease the pressure on his scarred shoulder without breaking contact. "Don't you have servants to test your thermal chambers and fluff your towels?" Something flickered across Vespira's face. Pain, maybe, or fear, quickly suppressed. Noble obligations do not always align with personal preferences. That's politician speak for "it's complicated." Everything is complicated when you are born to serve the hegemony's interests above your own. Vespira's grip on his hand tightened almost imperceptibly. "You mentioned your own complications. Failed career, financial instability. Do you always abandon your commitments when they become difficult?" Marcus felt his defensive walls slam up. "I didn't abandon anything. My commitment abandoned me." The words came out harsher than he intended. 17 people died when that station section collapsed, including 6 of my team. The official report said, "Unforeseeable structural failure due to inadequate materials." Unofficially, everyone knew I should have caught the stress fractures during inspection. "And this failure cost you your career?" "Cost me everything." Marcus stared at their joined hands, remembering the weight of those 17 names. Military doesn't want engineers who miss critical flaws. Civilian contractors don't want engineers with failure on their record. So now I debug environmental systems for freight haulers and pretend my shoulder doesn't feel like it's on fire every morning. Vespira studied his face with uncomfortable intensity. "You blame yourself for circumstances beyond your individual control. I blame myself for not being good enough when it mattered most." Marcus's voice roughened. "Those people trusted me to keep them safe. I failed them." "And the female who preferred your former companion?" "Jennifer." The name still tasted bitter. 3 years together, and she decides she wants someone with better prospects and emotional availability. Apparently, working 70-hour weeks to keep us financially stable while dealing with chronic pain made me distant and obsessive. You believe she abandoned you due to your struggles. She abandoned me because damaged goods don't make good long-term investments. Marcus felt the familiar spiral of self-recrimination starting. Can't blame her for wanting someone who isn't a walking collection of failures and medical bills. Vespira's markings pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm. You speak of yourself as if you were a malfunctioning machine, rather than a sentient being who has endured trauma. Sometimes that's what it feels like. Marcus was surprised by his own honesty. Something about this alien woman's presence made the words spill out easier than they had in months of therapy sessions. Like I'm operating on backup systems, hoping nobody notices the primary functions are offline. And yet, Vespera said softly, you continue to function, to work, to survive, to fight for what you believe you deserve. Her violet eyes met his. That suggests your primary systems are merely recalibrating. Marcus stared at her. That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me in months. He paused, studying her face. So what about you? What's a Calthani noble doing hiding in thermal pools instead of attending court functions? Vespera's composure cracked slightly. I am not hiding, I am postponing inevitable political necessities. What kind of political necessities? Marriage. The word came out like a curse. To Warlord Krayax of the Dominion Fleet. A union that will secure military alliance between our systems and prevent a war that would cost millions of lives. Sounds romantic. Marcus's sarcasm was gentle, understanding. Krayax collects consorts like trophies. His previous 4 wives died under mysterious circumstances. Training accidents, unfortunate falls, sudden illnesses that the medical scans somehow missed. Vespera's grip on his hand had become almost painful. But the alliance is crucial for my people's survival. Without Dominion fleet protection, the hegemony falls to the Void Syndicate within 2 cycles. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. A familiar ache he recognized from his own trapped circumstances. So you're sacrificing yourself for everyone else. It is my duty as third resonance. My genetic line carries the biocompatibility markers necessary for the alliance treaty. Without the marriage bond, Krayax cannot access Calthani thermal technologies for his war effort. Duty's a hell of a thing, Marcus said quietly. I used to think duty meant working myself to death for people who saw me as expendable. Took losing everything to realize maybe duty should work both ways. They sat in silence as the station completed another rotation cycle. The thermal pool had grown warmer, and Marcus could feel the mineral-rich water working on his chronic pain, in ways his medication never managed. Vespera seemed perfectly comfortable, as if the heat energized rather than drained her. Your species adapts quickly to thermal stress, she observed. Most beings require gradual acclimation to prevent cellular damage. We're stubborn that way. Evolution's response to being too dumb to know when we're beaten. Marcus shifted again, and the movement brought them closer together. He caught that ozone and flower scent again, stronger now. Though I'm starting to think maybe survival isn't the only thing worth fighting for. Vespera's eyes widened slightly. What else would be worth such effort? Connection, maybe. Understanding. The chance to matter to someone who isn't calculating your utility value. Marcus realized he was staring into her violet eyes and didn't look away. When was the last time someone asked what you wanted, not what you could provide? Vespera's markings pulsed brighter, the rhythm faster now. Calthani nobles do not indulge in personal desires. We serve the hegemony's needs. That's not what I asked. Vespera was quiet for a long moment, her free hand tracing patterns. In the luminescent water. I wanted to study bioresonance theory at the Galactic Institute, to understand how different species' energy signatures interact, maybe develop new therapeutic applications. Her voice was barely above a whisper. But noble daughters learn protocol and alliance management, not scientific research. You're brilliant, Marcus said simply. I can hear it in how you analyze things, how you think through problems. That's not something duty can fake. Intelligence is irrelevant if it cannot be applied to serve the hegemony. Intelligence is never irrelevant. Trust me, I've seen what happens when smart people get ignored because they don't fit the system's expectations. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. What if there was another way? What if you didn't have to choose between your people's survival and your own? There is no alternative. The alliance requires the marriage bond, and I am the only remaining third. resonance of appropriate age and genetic compatibility. But what if the alliance didn't require marriage? What if there was another form of biocompatibility that could provide the same technological access? Vespera's markings suddenly flared, brilliant white. What are you suggesting? Marcus felt the energy surge between their joined hands. Stronger now, more synchronized. I'm suggesting that maybe we've stumbled onto something unprecedented here. This bioresonance between us. It's not normal, is it? No, Vespera whispered. Human and Kalthani physiology should not be compatible for sustained resonance. The energy signatures are too different. But you... She stared at their hands where her markings were pulsing in perfect rhythm with what Marcus realized was his own heartbeat. Your biosignature is matching mine, adapting, synchronizing. Could that synchronization provide the same technological interface as a marriage bond? In theory, yes. But it would require permanent bioresonance pairing, continuous physical proximity, shared neural pathways. Vespera's eyes met his. You would essentially be bonding yourself to a Kalthani noble for life, gaining access to our biothermal abilities while providing stabilization for our more volatile energy systems. And you would be bonding yourself to a damaged human with chronic pain and a talent for finding creative solutions to impossible problems. Marcus, Vespera's voice was unsteady. You cannot possibly understand what you are suggesting. Bioresonance bonding is permanent, irreversible. You would be tied to me, to my world, to responsibilities you never chose. Lady, I've spent 3 years tied to responsibilities I never chose, drowning in obligations to people who saw me as disposable. Marcus felt something settle into place in his chest, a rightness he hadn't experienced since before the explosion. Maybe it's time I chose my own chains. And if I am not worth such a sacrifice? Marcus looked at her. Really looked. At the intelligence blazing behind those violet eyes. The strength in how she carried herself despite her fear. The vulnerability she was finally allowing him to see. At the way her bioluminescent markings pulsed in harmony with his own biorhythms, creating patterns of light that seemed to dance between them. Vespera, he said softly. You're the first person in 3 years who's made me feel like I might be worth something more than my damage. If that's not worth fighting for, I don't know what is. Her hand trembled in his. The trial period is nearly complete. In 1 hour, we must declare the winner. Or, Marcus said, his voice steady with sudden certainty, we could declare something else entirely. What? A new kind of alliance not based on duty or political necessity, but on choice. On the possibility that two damaged people might be able to help each other become something better than they were apart. Vespera's markings blazed like small stars, and Marcus felt the answering warmth spread through his own nervous system. For the first time in years, his shoulder didn't hurt. For the first time in her life, Vespera smiled without calculation or political motive. I choose partnership, she said quietly. I choose you, Marcus replied. The bioresonance trial was officially over, but their real journey together was just beginning. As the station completed its rotation cycle, two beings from different worlds sat in perfect synchronization, their joined hands glowing with the promise of possibilities neither had dared imagine alone. The thermal waters hummed around them, charged now with something far more powerful than mineral content. The universe, Marcus decided, had finally paid him back with interest.